Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel and to this impromptu live stream that I'm doing tonight. I just thought I would pop on here and do one of my Q&As. And so what I like to do is I just get on to live and open myself up to you as a writing resource if you are working on a writing project, if you have something you're working on that you would like feedback on, or if you are, let's say, drafting a book and have run into a problem or are wondering if something that is like normal in your book writing and drafting experience. I would love to talk about it. I'm here to answer any questions you might have and just make myself available as a Q&A resource. So I will just be hanging out here for like the next half an hour, 45 minutes, and I'll be working on my projects in the meantime. But if you have any writing questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for popping by. I have a very exciting project that I'm working on that I'm extremely pumped about. So it's a little bit of a secret project. I haven't talked about it at all, but I'm very, very excited about it. I think that's a lie. I have talked about it a little bit, but only like in past live streams. Oh, all right. We have a question. Hi, BF. Thank you so much for stopping by. So BF asked, how do you stay motivated and on task writing when you have a million and one other things to do? This is the eternal challenge, isn't it? So what I do and what people do varies between each person. But what I like to do is I like to set writing time and just have a block of very focused writing time where I don't do anything else and just write. And that typically helps me. I stick to a schedule and I write at the same time every day. And I don't stop until I've hit my word count. And like that's my protected writing time. That makes it really easy for me to like structure my day and my expectations around that time. Like my expectations for that time is just that I'm going to write and get those words done, not that I'm going to be doing any other tasks. I always have like set hours of the day that I like to write. So that's a strategy that typically helps me, but I mean, things happen, wrenches get thrown into that all the time, and it's not always a perfect system, but it keeps me on task for most of the days. And so that's typically what I recommend doing. And it doesn't have to be hours if you have a recommended writing or like a structured writing. I'm sorry, I have a dog in the background and I just heard some uh, pitter pattering and I just turned around and he was licking his own butt. So that's really cute. Um, it doesn't have to be like a 3 hour long block or a 4 hour long block, even if you just say, like, I always write at, at 9 o'clock, I'll write for half an hour, and that's my little block. You just stick to that, and then you have half an hour of protected writing time where all the other life distractions can't get in the way. And so that's typically what I like to do and what I recommend. Also, writing in the same place typically helps if you have a little routine around your writing. So with me, I always write in the same place typically, and I like to write at the same time. And I always make my first cup of coffee for the day right before I sit down to write. So I can kind of associate that sitting down to write with the coffee, and that helps put me in the mindset to write a little bit easier. Oh, we got another question. Aaron asked, do you plot your books out in advance in an outline, or do you just start writing? I always plot my books out in advance. I am a hardcore plotter and I love to plot all of my books in extreme detail. I like to use a method called plot grids, which I've made a couple of videos on this channel about before. It's essentially a type of grid where every single row of the grid corresponds to a different chapter in your story, and every column corresponds to a plot or subplot. So you're able to keep track of all of the different main plots and character arcs and subplots over the course of your story and track them throughout the entire manuscript. So typically when I start to write, I first like to outline stuff on a whiteboard. So I will go to the whiteboard and write a story arc that kind of looks like it's this shape where you start over here and then you have the rising action that goes up to a climax, then it comes down in a resolution. I will draw that out on the whiteboard and then I'll plot different plot points over the course of that arc. So at the beginning, you have like the point of entry and the inciting incident where your story starts. Around the middle, you have the midpoint and you have like the rising action going to the midpoint. You have the rising action after the midpoint, the climax, and then the resolution of your story. So I start by trying to figure out that general arc. Like if I was writing a romance story, I'd say like, okay, the inciting incident is person A meets person B. The midpoint is they get into a giant, no, maybe they like some giant thing would have to change in their relationship, like I don't know, maybe person B moved to a new city and now they're long distance. The climax would be like some giant wrench gets thrown in their relationship and they break up, and then they get back together after that, and then there's like a resolution. So I'd kind of have the general framework of the story put together, and then after that happens, I start brainstorming scenes. So I'll just start thinking of different scenes that could fit into that general structure and just write them on post-it notes and stick them on my whiteboard so I can start mapping in what order things typically go in, and then start to sort of have the bare bones of an outline. And once I have that, I take it to the plot grid and I go in serious detail with all of it. So I will write down every single plot point. I'll try to make sure I can connect every chapter together, every scene together, and then I'll start mapping out little subplots and character arcs and track them through all the different points in the story. And then once I have that, it's pretty rough still, but it's only when I have that that I feel comfortable enough to start putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and actually writing the story. My plot grids are never exactly what ends up being the first draft of the novel. When I'm writing, I usually have better ideas for things than the ones that I initially came up with on my plot grid. Like I just made a plot grid for the project I'm working on now. I I think plotted maybe 25 chapters. And in the 3 chapters that I'd outlined in my plot grid, I had written 7 chapters in the actual draft of my story. So hopefully this doesn't mean I'm going to have like a book that's 1,000 words long, but I ended up moving some stuff that happened later up earlier and just shifted stuff around because it felt better in the moment. So they're all fluid outlines, but I do like to have a great idea of what I am going to write before I start to write it. Um, oh, all right. We got another question. Tony asked, "What is your opinion on authors using AI to help with their story?" So this is a pretty contentious subject, but I would say right now, and this is a big debate, and everybody has an opinion, and who knows actually what's right versus wrong. But I would say that it's probably not fantastic if you just tell AI to write the book for you, because it's not going to be as good because AI is not as good at creative stuff as people are. It's going to come out with a crappier product. And B, it takes all the fun out of writing. Like I feel like the people should be making art because about being human and about being a person, because that's the whole reason that people like to look at and consume art. It's like that's not something that we should hand off to AI. It's like the people should be making the art. Um, so I think all art, like the books that are written by people, are better. I think that people are more creative. I think that people should be the ones generating the art, and I think that it's just more fun when you're developing your own project instead of just putting an idea in and asking AI to generate stuff for you. I do think that AI is helpful in proofreading and in catching typos, in catching errors. I think it's a really helpful tool as long as it's treated like a tool and not a crutch to your writing. I think that it's really important for people to learn how to edit themselves and how to proofread their work before just asking AI to do it for them. But it is helpful, like once you have already done that yourself, to run it through AI and just see if they catch anything that you haven't. I have done that with my books. I've like used that as a final proofreading tool, and like I was just playing around with it for the most recent book that I published just to see if it would be helpful. But 9 times out of 10, it was not helpful. Like just I would ask it to bold all of the grammatical issues, and they would just bold full paragraphs of text that were absolutely fine even after I proofread them and they had no typos. So I don't know. I think that it will ultimately get better over time, but it's a weird, muddy field right now, and that's my general thoughts on it. But I don't think that it's a very good, like, I don't think AI is good at generating content, and definitely not as good as people are at generating content. So especially creative content. Like, you can just tell if you ask AI to write something, it's always written in, like, the dumbest, weirdest, most harebrained way with the longest words. It's like they pulled out a thesaurus and they're just putting all these weird words in. It sounds like AI wrote it. It doesn't sound like a person wrote it. So, yeah. Um, Miss Blogger asked, "How do you create your characters? Do you use character profiles like Abby Evans does?" I do not use character profiles when I create my characters. I let myself have a much more feelings driven approach to creating characters because I used to feel when I was filling out character questionnaires that I would just make up answers to the questions and then I would forget those answers to the questions as soon as I started writing. And I didn't feel like I knew enough about the characters when I was first making them to answer all these really specific questions about them. So I think that those are helpful and they do play a role. I have never used them, but they do definitely help some people. Um, if I were to use them, I would only want to use them once I was fine tuning a character that I already sort of knew. So, what I like to do when I'm creating characters, like for the project I'm working on now, I had an idea for it and I generally knew who the people had to be in order for the story to work the way I wanted it to work. And I generally knew what their dynamic would be. I'd have one character who was like a little bit, selfish at the beginning and just not a really super nice person. And I wanted to, like, it's a team story. Like, she has to work with like another person and they have to solve something together. And so I wanted that like teammate of hers to be opposite that. Like, she's very kind of dark and cynical and snarky. And I wanted him to be more like golden retriever, very enthusiastic person to kind of counterbalance that. And where she's very pessimistic and like, I hate everything. I don't want anybody's help on anything. He is very persistent and happy and like, I'm going to help you even though you don't want any help with anything. And like, I knew that was the dynamic I wanted them to have, but I didn't know anything else about them. So I just tried to think of like the most basic details about them. Like, okay, that's how they have to be for the story. Why did they end up that way? What were the experiences in their life that created this kind of personality of theirs? And then I had a sort of backstory for them. And then after that, I started digging a little bit more into why they feel the way they do about things, and then took it a step further and was like, okay, if they don't like this, then they probably wouldn't like that, and just put together a very rough picture of who each of the characters were. I find that as I draft and as I write my first draft, I would discover a lot more about all of my characters. And then by the end of writing my first draft, I would know enough about them to be able to fill out a character questionnaire. So I don't have a really set process for it. It's a very organic process and it's a feelings forward process. I really want to be able to feel my characters when I write them, and I want to be able to hear their voices when I'm drafting, even if they're not perfectly written. I want to be able to feel them as characters. I know that doesn't that is not extremely helpful, but I want to be able to hear their voices and get a sense for who they are as people before I start to draft, but just a little sense. And then as I draft the book, I learn more about them as they talk a little bit about their backstory. Or maybe I'm like, they start talking about their backstory and I realize that what I had thought their backstory would be was not the best way to go about it or wouldn't really work. So then I change things and tweak it as they go. But they really start out as the little like line stick figure drawings of people in my first draft, and then I put a little bit more on them every single draft that I write until they're fully fleshed out characters. So it's very focused on like closing your eyes and picturing the person and trying to see if you can hear them and see them in your mind and relate to them like an actual human being. But yeah, it's not a process, and I don't have a character sheet that I like to work with. Um, Aaron asked, "Do you start with the plot first then or the characters? And is there specific plot grid software you use?" I don't use a specific plot grid software. I use Microsoft Excel and I use Google Sheets. So it's not high tech. I don't do pen and paper for plot grids because it just drives me crazy, but I have been using Sheets and it's been great. Um, I typically do both at the same time, because I find that both of them inform each other. Like, if you have an idea for a plot, you need certain characters in order to make that plot happen. Like your plot needs certain characters in order to make the plot occur. Your plot may not work with just any character. So I think that once you have an idea for a plot, your next question has to be, okay, who would actually do this and who would be affected by this and who could make this happen the same way, and or like in the way that I want to, and have my idea happen in the way that I want to, and then build them both at the same time, because I really do think they inform each other. Like if I had written my book They Stay with like, oh, this is an example. So I had my idea for my paranormal thriller They Stay, and it's about a girl, a 16-year-old girl whose younger brother goes missing, and she absolutely freaks out and puts her entire life on hold, and like her sole focus is to find her little brother, and then ends up going to like the ends of the earth, believing in all of this crazy paranormal stuff, and believing that his disappearance had something to do with the paranormal, as she tries to find him, and she is just laser focused on finding him. And so I knew in order to pull this story off, I'd have to give her a realistic motivation for being that attached to her younger brother, and the story wouldn't work if she were not that attached to her younger brother. If she were just moderately attached to her younger brother, or if her little brother just drove her absolutely bonkers crazy, or if she had another sibling who was closer to that brother than she was, or if she had a really attentive and capable, loving parents who she could defer to in the search for her younger brother, and her parents could be the ones in charge to find him. Like I had to create that girl and create that boy and create that family in order to create that drive that she had to find her brother. So it happened hand in hand, the creation of the plot and the creation of the characters. And that's, I believe, how it should be. And that's how I think you get really strong characters, is if they're tied into the plot and if their growth is crucial to the development of the story. Um, Miss Blogger asked, "Do you know what a misbelief is?" I have not heard that term before, no, but if I had to guess, is that something to do with like something a character thinks is true, but is actually not true, or like proven not to be true over the course of the plot? Or is it, what they believe that they want versus what they actually need? But no, I haven't used or heard that term before. Um, Oh, we got another question. I'm using a plot grid for my comic book because of your recommendation. Yay! Awesome. It does help. Do you have any tips for coming up with arcs for my main or side characters? So this is a very individualized question that like my answer will be different depending on what your like main character and who your main character is and who your side characters are. There's no one size fits all character arc, but I would say that you should start with figuring out who your main character is at the beginning of your story, slash like who they have to be at the beginning of your story to embark on the quest or to take on the journey in some way. And then figure out how they can change, because your character has to be different at the end of your story versus at the beginning of your story. And there have to be things that happen over the course of the story that change them in that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be a positive change. It can be a negative change, but in most stories, the main character changes in a positive way or a way that makes a statement about something. If you're like, it depends on the story that you're writing, but if a character really nosedives, it's typically like a tragedy, or like they become an anti-hero or something like that. But there always has to be change in character growth. I think that you want to think about their character arcs as being like one of those little arcs. So every single character arc has a place where they begin. They have like a midpoint, which is a big definitive, like crazy change moment, a climax where they're really pushed their breaking point, and they have to see if they can change into that final version of themselves in order to succeed in the climax, and then have a resolution. I always like to think about character growth. Like character growth to me is very connected to theme, and the theme of the story, because like the characters drive the story. Like I highly recommend, where is this book? Oh, it's in the other room. I don't actually have this book. It's a book. It's called Dynamic Story Creation by Maxwell Alexander Drake. I have interviewed him on this channel multiple times, and he has this amazing way that he breaks down what a theme is. And we did two like longer videos, like I think hour long kind of podcasty type videos, where he breaks down what a theme is and how he likes to use theme and how a character drives that theme. And the character growth in the story drives the theme. So, like, if in Finding Nemo, for example, the theme of Finding Nemo that he proposes in the book is that is it better to be an overbearing parent or a parent that allows your kids room to figure stuff out for themselves? And at the beginning of the story, like that's not necessarily the plot of Finding Nemo. Like the plot, physical plot is like Nemo is missing, kind of like, he goes away and gets fish napped, and then Marlin has to go and find Nemo and rescue him. But the underlying theme is driven by Marlin's character growth. At the beginning, he's a very overprotective parent. And by the end, in the climax, he's challenged because he wants to go in and help Nemo, but realizes that the only way that they're going to be able to save the day is if he allows Nemo to do this on his own. And so he's able to stand back and allow Nemo to do it, and then they're able to be successful in the climax. But if Marlin had gotten involved, they would have failed and everything would have been horrible. So you can also think about character arcs in terms of theme and what you want the message of your story to be. And depending on that message, that can inform how you want your characters to grow over the course of your story. But if you have specifics, if you give me a little bit more and explain kind of what the general like who your main characters are and who they are at the beginning of your story and who you want them to be at the end, I can give you some more pointers, or we can bounce ideas off of each other, and try to work out some more specifics for your character arcs. But that is like my general advice. Um, Miss Blogger asked, what is your comfort genre? To read or to write? Because I obviously love to write YA. I am still on my YA paranormal kick now. Even like with my main series and then with this new project, they're all YA paranormal stories, and that is definitely the genre that I've been loving exploring for the past couple of years. Um, to read, I would definitely say mysteries, like a good Agatha Christie mystery. I love the whodunit mysteries, just a very classic murder mystery would for sure be my comfort genre to read. And movies too to consume. I love mysteries. So yeah, give me a good old fashioned murder mystery. Anything like Knives Out or like The Glass Onion, anything like that. Love those too. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I've been loving all these questions so far. Thank you all so much for engaging with this and for coming to this live stream. Yeah. Oh, we got another comment. Um, I'm studying computer science. My passion's always been telling stories. I wanted to study animation so I could have my own show, but alas, I had to drop that because of my financial situation. So I figured I could turn the idea for a show into a book series. I'm really excited about it. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's really exciting. That's great that you're embarking on your writing career. I'm so glad that you're here and joining our writing community. I love this. I can't believe I was about to say I love writing. Like it's not already obvious, but that's really excited. Exciting. I'm very excited for you and congratulations. um, but what is your comfort horror trope? Oh man. Um, why am I like just now blanking on every single horror trope ever? Um, I think probably I mean, this like a Criminal Minds true crime mystery where like there is some sort of like serial killer and the team has to solve the mystery and like stop the killer. Like a good kind of true crime based, I mean, it can be fictional, but like that sort of structure, like a good Criminal Minds episode where they stop the serial killer. That I think would be my comfort horror trope, which is also sort of a thriller trope, but I would also say that serial killers are definitely horror. So depends how it's executed. There are some episodes of Criminal Minds that are like serious hardcore horror. Those are like traumatizing. Um, BF said, I started using plot grids and character Wikipedias thanks to you. Are you still available for hire in plot and story development? Oh, that's really awesome that you started using plot grids and character wikis. That's very exciting. Right now, I'm not doing any coaching because I am in the middle of writing projects and just really flat out busy with that because I'm doing a writing project and then also developing They Stay Five. And, just I am dedicating myself fully to that. But I may open that back up at some point. And if I do, I will email about it on my mailing list. So if you haven't already subscribed to my mailing list, go ahead and do so because I will announce it there. But yeah, I'm not doing that now, but maybe again in the future. I don't really know when though, because yeah, just crazy busy with all this writing stuff. It's so awesome. I'm like so in these projects right now. Um, all right. Jennifer Brown said, "Hi Claire, I'm working on a book set in a vocational rehabilitation center. How do I get a core group of characters for my supporting cast?" Do you mean like how do you create a group of characters that's like balanced for your supporting cast? Like how you go about creating characters to support your main characters? Um, because this is also pretty subjective depending on the type of story that you're writing and like what your plot demands. But I would say that um, you want your supporting characters, every supporting character that you add to a story should have a purpose. You don't want to just have supporting characters in there for the sake of having supporting characters in there. There should be a reason that every single character is in your story. Um, I think that you want to explore exactly what every supporting character brings to the story and have that be different. You don't want to have two supporting characters that do the exact same thing. You want to make sure that you have characters that bring different things to the table. And you want to make sure typically that your cast doesn't get too big depending on the type of book that you're writing. So I don't know if you've seen the. This is just on my mind because I watched it recently and I'm obsessed with it because this is exactly the kind of media that I love to write and consume. If you've ever watched the TV show on Netflix, School Spirits, it's fantastic and is a great example of how to create an ensemble supporting cast of like characters that all bring something a little bit different to the table. Like the story is about this girl who dies and she kind of wakes up as a ghost in her high school and she can't leave the high school and she meets all of these other ghosts that are also trapped in her high school and every single one of them is very different and brings something different to the group dynamic. So it makes them a really interesting cast and like group of kids to follow because no two are exactly the same. So highly recommend that show, and that's just what came to my mind when answering this question. I hope that helped. um, Aaron asked, "Do you determine in advance how long a piece should be? Have you ever decided to write a series in advance?" So I have high hopes, but I'm an overwriter, as like a serious overwriter. So I will have high hopes to write something and like have it be a short draft, and then it'll end up being ridiculously long and really heavy and difficult to edit through. But yeah, I always typically have a general idea and then it always goes longer and then I always have to cut it back because that's just how I like to write. Um, I did decide to write my series as a series in advance and I had a general idea for what the plot was going to be before I really dove into the books. Like I had a general series arc for what I wanted it to look like, which I highly recommend doing because you don't want to start writing a series and then get halfway through the series and realize that you don't know how you're going to end it and then you have to wrap it up because that makes it opens the door for things being really unbalanced or confusing and it's just it's not a great way to go into that. So I highly recommend just having an idea even if you're not a plotter. You should just plot a little bit and just understand what role every book plays in the series. Like if you plot all of your books out on a story arc, which one is your midpoint, which one is your climax, which one is like your rising action book and why is this book important and just understanding the role every single book plays and a general idea of what happens in each one. Like I had that for the 5 books in my series. I still don't know all the details. Like with They Stay Five, I had like, okay, in this book they do this and then this happens. Now I have to figure out how that's going to happen. I still have no idea. So, but that's what makes it exciting. But I know that like general umbrella for what that book's going to be and the role that it plays. So yeah, I definitely do a little bit of advanced planning with all of my series, and that's not to say that you can't decide to turn a standalone into a series, like, have a standalone with series potential, but when you turn it into a series, I recommend doing some thinking and deciding how long it's gonna be before you start writing book 2, because a book 2 that is, like, the middle book in a trilogy is gonna be different than, like, a book 2 that is the 2nd book in a 5-book series. So, yeah. All right, I'm gonna have to start wrapping this up in just a couple of minutes. So I'm gonna see if I can get through these questions. And if you have any last minute questions, drop them in the comments so that I can get to them before I have to log off. Um, let's see. What's my guilty pleasure trope to both read and write? Ghosts. Coral T asked, what do you think of the idea of publishing a pitch Bible or concept book before the actual book series? Is that a thing? I don't I'm not really I'm not familiar with that. I don't I've never seen that done before in publishing, and I don't really understand what that is. So, I don't feel qualified to comment on like, give an opinion on the idea itself, but I can say I've never heard of that being done before. Oh, we got another question. Do you ever worry about your book being too derivative? I know where every shred of inspiration has come from in my own work, but perhaps the reader of the end product won't be so discerning. Every single book is derivative of something. People pull inspiration from their lives and the media that they consume all the time. So I think it's completely normal for that to happen. I think it's completely normal for people to do that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I think that everything is just, there are only so many ideas in the world. So it's just how you combine them and like the combinations that you use to make things that are original. Of course, I worry about it. I worry about everything. I'm like a sensitive, creative person that loves to worry. But yeah, I think that we don't need to focus so much. I mean, you don't want to write the exact same story word for word, but as long as you're trying to be original and you are original, I think that it's totally fine to draw inspiration from things that really made you feel something in media that you consume. And I think that everybody does it. And I think it's like totally fine to do that. Um, And all right, let's see. We got one last question. Do you have any advice on finding readers? I mean, isn't this the eternal marketing question? I'm always trying to find more readers. As an indie author, there are tons of opportunities to find readers. Sometimes it can feel really challenging. I've had a lot of success running Facebook ads in the past couple of years. That has really helped me open stuff up. Or like opened doors to finding new readers, doing giveaways, like running a giveaway and then running ads to the giveaway has found like readers that would be similar in books like the book that I'm writing. That was really successful at the beginning before I even had a book published. I could get them onto my mailing list, and then when I had my own book, I could announce it and share it with people. Um, so I mean, it's tricky there. It's hard to answer this in just one way. It's a very multifaceted question, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of innovating and social media. A lot of people find readers on social media. So yeah, I'll do some more marketing videos on the channel and share my experience. But I have done a couple on things that have been really successful for me, like running free promotions on Amazon has been really successful for me. I found a lot of readers that way. So yeah, I think that that's all I got time for tonight. But thank you guys so much for coming to this live stream and for your amazing questions. I'm super grateful for you taking the time to come hang out with me and for asking me these questions. I will be doing more of these in the future, so keep an eye out for when I post them. I hope you have a fantastic week and weekend. And as always, everybody, happy writing.